Who is Packers second-round pick Christian Watson from North Dakota State? Where did he come from? How did he get to this point in his career? And how does he answer for the criticisms of his productivity, of his readiness to compete in the NFL? Hear it from the man who covered him in North Dakota State and who also covers the Green Bay Packers. It's the perfect mix. Let's have some fun.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. You can follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. We are not going to waste any time. We are going to get into it with Ross Uglem from Packer Report, also of Bison Report. There is not a better person, aside from maybe Christian Watson himself, which is, by the way, something we are efforting, to talk about Christian Watson, his fit with Green Bay, his journey, and everything that he brings to the Green Bay Packers as the highest receiver the Packers have drafted since Javon Walker. Just a couple spots higher than Jordy Nelson was picked. And I think that Ross is a big fan of Christian Watson. I don't think that. I know that. And so I also wanted to make sure that I was going to press him on, okay, where does he need to get better? How can he improve? All that kind of stuff. Not just, oh, hey, isn't he great? So here is Ross Uglem from Packer Report and Bison Report to give us the skinny on the newest Packers receiver. Joining me now, he is my former editor at Packer Report. He is also at the Bison Report, which is why he's here. Ross Uglem joins me now. Ross, when the Packers moved up to get Christian Watson, how far from your mind were pants?
Certainly nowhere near. I like to, because like a lot of the times I'll go on now, obviously that time I just jumped on to what She Said TV was doing live because I felt like I needed to interact with people. If I went just like this, I didn't know what I would do with myself. So I jumped into like a big chat there, but I like to put like our group DM for our draft coverage at Packer Report. I like to put it down so that I can really get like a true reaction to the suspense of the announcement, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to pull that off. I set the phone down when they traded up. I didn't want anybody in our group to tip it. Like, I'm glad that they tipped it so we were able to get our content out as soon as possible and get those sweet, sweet clicks. But, I was able to just see it happen, and I didn't put my phone face down. I put my phone face up on like the ottoman, and it was just bing, 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 because like I'm getting texts, I'm getting Twitter notifications,
tagged and everything.
Tagged in everything. People asking where my pants are. Do I have them on? Did I have any on in the first place? Et cetera, et cetera. My pants were quite the top of conversation actually on Friday. So no, it's fun. It was fun.
It's part of your brand, Ross. That's
exactly.
It's part of the deal. So let's deep dive a little bit into Christian Watson, the player, the person, because you've been as close to that program as anyone over the last few years. You've got to see him play in person. You've got to talk to him. I want to talk about some of the criticisms that have been out there. All of this, we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of it. But when was the first time he made you turn your head and go, wait a second, what is this? Who is this?
Oh, I mean, fall camp. They were deep. Really deep at the receiver position his true freshman year. And at that time, the transfer portal wasn't really a thing. The 4-game rule didn't exist. So like you just kind of knew like he was going to redshirt. But it's FCS program. It's not Alabama. You're not a 5-star. You roll in there, you play right away, and then you bounce after 3 years. That's not the deal. In fact, in my opinion, a lot of the reasons that North Dakota State is 9-3 in all true road games in their 12 opportunities to play FBS opponents is because it's a lot of 23 and 24-year-old men that have played together for 5 years, just physically dominating the opponent. But you just don't see kids like him. I think he's allegedly grown 1 inch from 6'3" to 6'4" from when he turned 18 to now when he's 22. But still, you don't see 6'3" kids that are just shredded like that in Fargo. Generally, a lot of 5'10", 5'11", 6'1" grinders from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Ashwaubenon, Wisconsin, man. Like they get a lot of the kids in all seriousness. No, they get a lot of the kids that the Gophers don't want and that the Badgers don't want. And that like tier is where a lot of their kids come from. But they did start going into Texas and Florida to get skill kids, to get speed kids, corners, receivers, returners, etc. Even tailbacks, like one of their 2 top guys at tailback now arguably are from Georgia and Texas. And C-Dub was just a part of kind of that Florida pipeline that included a lot of other really good players.
So this is an offense that is not going to allow for anyone to go out and catch 100 passes. It's just not what they do. It's not the Big 12. It's not the SEC. How did you see? Just let's put the criticism of it aside.
Sure.
How did, just from strictly I cover and watch this team every day, how did you see his evolution as a receiver in terms of market share, target share, all that stuff?
I mean, truly incredible. Kind of came to campus with the reputation of a little bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. Like as far as, maybe not showing up for meetings on time or not doing the little things right. Like he was an alien. He knew he was an alien. He's like, I am the most athletic dude on this entire field. And, you got to block. You got to block there. That's the number one thing. You got to block. And so you go back and look at you talk about market share, you talk about playing time, whatever. Like you go back and look at his redshirt freshman year, which, by the way, that clip that I posted against the team in the red jerseys that was in the Dakota Dome against the University of South Dakota, catching a ball from Easton Stick, is one of probably 10 or 12 receptions from his redshirt freshman year. But that's like when you start like, oh, this dude is actually different. And I posted that to show that he has some different traits and skills than Valdez Scantling, which is a popular comp. And if we want to get into why I hate that comp, we certainly can. But then you just moved on. And one of the big things too was Easton Stick loved Darius Shepard. And there was a damn good reason for that.
Packers legend Darius Shepard.
Yeah, well, but you think of North Dakota State's level of football, and people get after Shep because of the fumble against Indianapolis and a couple other things. But you think about his story, camp invite to 53-man roster, that was impressive. We need to, I think, observe more of the positive things of Darius Shepard's time as a Packer than the negative. He's still kicking around in the USFL. But you just had a receiver that dominated at that level that was older than him. And he still got his, but he really didn't break out until Easton moved on, Shep moved on, and Trey Lance became the quarterback. And those two had a connection.
Why then are we hearing about, oh, he didn't produce with Trey Lance, the numbers aren't gaudy? What is the explanation for that, if there is one?
Yeah, the explanation for that is a very simple one, and it's twofold. And I've wanted to kind of combat this criticism with some facts, and here are one more of a subjective fact, and then another set of just stone cold facts. And the set of stone cold facts are, during Christian's career, the team went 52-4, won 3 Division I FCS national championships. They won by an average of 37-12. So he was literally seated for large portions of fourth quarters. And they ran the ball 2,000. I'll say it this way. They ran the ball 2,500 times during his time there, and they threw it 1,000. They threw it 1,000 times during his 4-year career. I don't know what else to tell you. And by the way, it worked. They were winning 37-12 and they went 52-4. So look, I mean, if they would have been losing in more second halves, there might have been some sweeter numbers, but like they, by the way, had some sweet stuff in for Trey Lance and him, frankly, to run the football as well. You go look at his rushing stats, but I mean, go look at the box score from North Dakota State's one national championship game with Trey Lance at quarterback. I think Trey ran it 26 times, and I think they ran it 48 times, and they won the game. That is North Dakota State football. It's not the triple option. It's not the veer, but it's a lot of 22 personnel. It's a lot of 21 personnel, a lot of A-gap power, a lot of G. I mean, they were not behind and needing to throw it. And like I said, a lot of times, man, against Youngstown State, Indiana State, and you can use strength of competition as a criticism. I'll disagree with a lot. I think their league is better than the Sun Belt. I think their league is right there with the Mountain West. I think there is, a few other FBS leagues that the top half of the Valley would just absolutely smack. But
just for some perspective here, I don't mean to interrupt, but Gardner Minshew in his last year at Washington State threw the ball 662 times.
Yeah,
in a season.
Exactly. And they threw the ball 1,000 times in his career, 1,040 to be exact. And this, by the way, is with current NFL quarterback Easton Stick and current NFL quarterback Trey Lance, both drafted in the top 5 rounds. These are not like, oh, well, they didn't have a dude. They had a dude. I don't know how many other schools in the entire country can say that they produced a first-round pick and at least a fifth-round pick during one player's career. Oklahoma, and then I don't know, who else. But anyway, that's kind of the deal. Is if you want to talk about numbers and production, they won, and they won by running the ball.
All right, more from our conversation with Ross Uglem in just a second. Before we get there, today's episode brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Did you make some money betting on the NFL draft? Well, if you didn't, or if you missed the opportunity, there's still NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, now the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup, the race for Lord Stanley's Cup. Why not make some money on that? And the best place to do it is at BetOnline. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering info, plus live betting, playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. All right, back to Ross. So you have to be able to block. You have to be able. He didn't have huge opportunities, and I've been saying for the entire draft process, 90+ percentile in dominator. So when they produced, when they had yards, when they had touchdowns through the air, he did the thing. That's what you'd like to see. There is this other part of the MVS comp. And I know that you want to do some anti-MVS propaganda here. And it's to me, it's not
quiz. I like
no, it's no, I know. That's the thing is, I think if you put him in that role this year, he can do it. Yeah. But there's so much more that you can see with him. And Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl said this, he's a much looser athlete. And you see it with the ball in his hands. Yeah. He can do things in open space. MVS was all speed. This is no shade at MVS, who is a really, really good downfield receiver, one of the best pure deep threats in the game.
And by the way, and people don't understand this, specifically Packers fans, like an elite 5th-round pick.
Absolutely.
An elite 5th-round pick.
And got paid. We know that because he got paid by Kansas City. He cost so much, Green Bay could not afford to keep him, basically. Right. So we do need to have that caveat. Like if he's MVS, that's a good player. That's a useful player. But you and I both think
I'm gonna have a lot of crow to eat, but yeah.
Well, but that's a useful player, and you and I both think he can be a better player. So rather than just say this is why he's not MVS, tell me why you think he's more than that.
A couple things. He's a better blocker. I mean, no question about it. That was the first thing out of Matt LaFleur's mouth is we love the way he blocks. And people be like, oh, cool, he's a tight end. Like, that's awesome. It's important. Keeps you on the field. Because the thing about that is like when Scantling's not on the field and Lazard was, teams are thinking run. If you can get a guy who can kill you both ways, you're less scary. Like when you put Mercedes out there and Lazard, it's like, oh gee, I wonder what's coming. The dual threat thing is important even at receiver. Contact balance is a huge one. I'll put up a clip of this thing he did against South Dakota State, which has a bunch of pros, and like I said, would probably go 7-5 in the Mountain West. Honestly, I mean, Pierre Strong Jr. just got taken by the Patriots. The Steelers, I think, took their quarterback in the 7th round, or somebody took their quarterback in the 7th round. But he broke like 4 tackles on one comeback to the sideline, and you see that when he runs the ball too. You see that, by the way. This is the next one I'll say that makes him different. All-American kick returner as a junior. As a senior, they just didn't kick him the ball. All-American kick returner as a junior. And, the final thing really is that fluidity. Like you can see it in his ankles. You can see it in his hips. There's a screen grab that I think Mike Renner put up from the Senior Bowl.
From the Senior Bowl.
When he's like at a 45-degree angle running a slant on some DB that obviously got drafted the Senior Bowl. By the way, shouts to the Senior Bowl, 106 Senior Bowl participants drafted.
Yep.
But man, like you can just see the ankle flexion and the hip flexion and the ability to sink and the ability to win in the intermediate. Now,
and I believe the corners at the Senior Bowl voted him like basically toughest cover at the game. So like we talk about the level of competition when he was given the chance to go against major school guys.
They didn't want none.
They didn't want the smoke.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, and I get the other part of it is the route tree. I understand that. North Dakota State's offense was very much A-gap power, G, option read, fake A-gap power, throw a 70-yard post to Christian. Like that was the offense, man. They'd hand it to him. They'd smoke it out to him, and then they'd bomb it to him. One place where I think you can see little behind, little, I guess, inside baseball. But when Trey Lance, I mean, look, when you're North Dakota State, man, you don't expect your QB to leave as a redshirt sophomore. Does not happen.
Right.
So when they lost Trey Lance, they went in the portal, and Quincy Patterson from Virginia Tech had lost that job to Hendon Hooker. Well, Quincy and Trey were boys, and Trey was like, oh, they will get you ready for the pros. Like, if you're that dude, they'll figure it out. I'm here. Easton's here. Carson's here. Like, they'll get you figured out. And so they get former 4-star Quincy Patterson in there, who is an unbelievable athlete. I think he has a chance at the NFL as a tight end or maybe like an H-back, but was not incredibly accurate with the football and then dinged up his shoulder. And they replaced him with Cam Miller, who's the quarterback. If you happen to watch any of his tape from the second part of the season or the national championship game against Montana State, whatever, they're losing at halftime of that game. Patterson throws a pick on the play where he's injured, and Cam Miller comes in, and he's got one vision, man. Like, you watch Christian Watson when they're losing a game take over the game and bring them back to win it. By the way, in a situation, like I said, 52-4, in a situation they weren't in very often, and he just took the game over. And by the way, I think that corner, I know the corner was first team all league. I think he's got a chance at getting drafted. He's coming back this year. Missouri State, I can't remember the young man's name. I'll tweet it out later, but I think he's a legitimate 6th, 7th round priority free agent type guy. And Watson was just like, oh yeah, this is my game. We are not losing this game at home on homecoming. I'm that dude. And he was that dude.
You mentioned coming in with a little bit of an attitude, a little bit of I am that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like there was a maturity there? Because what Matt LaFleur said about Christian Watson was he was one of the smartest guys we had in the building. He was one of the most mature guys he had in the building. They fell in love with Christian Watson, the person.
So Chris Kleiman, who's the head coach at Kansas State University, is the staff that recruited Christian. But Matt Entz, who is the current head coach now, was Trey Lance's head coach, et cetera, was on staff as the defensive coordinator. Not a ton of interaction, obviously, with Christian, but was on staff when he arrived. Matt gets borderline emotional when he talks about the transformation that Christian Watson has made as a leader, as a person, over the last 5 years, whether it's leading the younger receivers in the meeting room, whether it's taking accountability. He just has like I said, kind of a pain in the ass as an 18-year-old kid to this man that we know now. And I know Christian a little bit. Obviously, you're not going to do what I do. I'm very much on the beat with North Dakota State. I farmed some of that out to our guy Andy Herman, your favorite, in Green Bay. But like, I can't live in two places at once, So my role with North Dakota State is much more day to day. And you're around these guys, and I know Christian. I mean, he shot me a DM after the opening press conference of his. He was like, "Yeah, it threw me off that you were in there," and he wasn't ready for me to be in the Zoom when he got drafted to the Packers. But you get to know these kids, and he was never rude or standoffish to me. I think he was smart enough to understand how to handle the media. But when you talk to coaches, when you talk to teammates, his evolution, if you will, from day one to year 5 was incredible. And it doesn't surprise me that he was the top receiver with the Wonderlic, as much as you may not believe in or like the Wonderlic, whatever, but it doesn't believe me that he was the top of the tops. And it doesn't believe me that Matt LaFleur gushed about him. It's unbelievable what the culture of that program did for that kid.
All right, we're going to finish up here with Ross on Locked On Packers. But before we get there, today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions and wait behind the counter while the person orders whatever parts they happen to carry? You have access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So why choose to spend 30%? 50%, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solutions to all of your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen Locked On NFL. The schedule may be dark. The new schedule comes out in just a couple days. But the NFL never stops, and neither does Locked On NFL. Get insight and opinions from hosts like Ross Jackson, Chris Carter, Tony Wiggins, plus a cadre of NFL hosts from around the Locked On Podcast Network. There's no offseason for real fans, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. All right, here's Ross. Okay, so we've talked about why you like him. We've talked about what you think the growth has been. Where is the growth needed so that he can reach his pinnacle?
Yeah, like Devontae, like Jordy, like James Jones, he needs to catch the football, and that's the drop rate was high, and I've explained that away a little bit too. I look, man, I spend a lot of my time defending Christian Watson out in these streets, so I feel like a cheerleader sometimes, but it really is true. So, like, for example, Carlos Correa just signed with my beloved Minnesota Twins, one of the best 5 baseball players in the world, I would say. As of like 5 days ago, he was batting 163. Now he's had 4 3-hit games. Funny how that works. But what I'm saying is, like, if you were a baseball fan and it had been 2.5 weeks since the season started and you looked at Carlos Correa and you saw they paid him $35 million to play shortstop and hit 160, what a bum. Well, you kind of like get the sample size over 300 at bats, not 18. Christian's kind of the same thing. I don't know what would have happened with more targets, but when you have the dropsies for a short time and it covers like 41% of the targets you're ever going to get in your life in that program, it becomes a more of an issue, and I'm not saying, that he doesn't have concentration drop issues or that he doesn't have drop issues at all. He does, but I've said it a million times, and not just when discussing Christian Watson. I have a hard time caring. I just don't, man. Like, Jordy dropped the ball. Devontae dropped the ball.
James Jones
dropped the ball. They get over it. It's like having the yips when you're playing golf and you just can't make a 3-footer. Eventually you figure it out and you make a 3-footer. And ultimately too, I understand, like, there's easy things for the average fan watching on TV to understand, right? Like, I can see that cornerback get beat and say he sucks. That's why I think Kevin King sucks. And I can watch that left tackle get beat and he sucks. And that's why Jason Spriggs sucks, because I watched his guy sack our quarterback. A drop is easy. You don't have to know nothing about football.
Right.
That when the ball is thrown to receiver and he drops it, that is bad. And I'm not calling all fans idiots. I'm just saying, like, that's a very easy.
I can't believe you just called all fans idiots.
Yeah, that's a very easy thing to see. But honestly, Peter, the difference between a wide receiver with great hands and a wide receiver with drop issues is like 2 drops in a season or 9. And I just don't care enough about those 7 plays. I just don't.
I think the other thing is when we evaluate prospects, you want to see, are they natural catchers of the ball?
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why Marquez Valdez-Scantling had some drops is he's like not a supernatural catcher. Like you watch Devontae. Yeah. Devontae is one of the most natural catchers of the football I have ever seen.
Right.
And the joke about Devontae Adams used to be that he couldn't catch. I mean, he was the dog being thrown the ball meme. Like that was how people knew him. I don't think that's Christian Watson. I think he is someone who is a more natural catcher of the ball. In fact, one of the first things I wrote in my notes is that he was a natural catcher. And then of course he goes out and there's the clip that's going around Twitter of him doing the MVS where he's 40 yards open down the field and just loses the ball. I actually, and I wasn't there for the post game. I would love to know if he just lost that in the lights.
The ball in the lights.
It looked to me like he lost it in the lights. I can't say for sure, but this is someone that I know you were high on. I was high on, not as high as you, but I think you and I were both someone who was higher than consensus on him and think this is a really exciting pick. Help me set as we close here. Last one. Help me set reasonable expectations for year 1, because I said yesterday on the show, I would not be surprised if Romeo Doubs was a more productive year 1 player and Christian Watson in 3 years or 2 years was the more productive player.
Yeah. It's people keep saying raw and I don't think he's that raw. Like, I think if he takes to coaching, which he has done, I think he can kind of do everything. I think opportunity, I'd be surprised if he's not more productive than Doubs, just because